evening and welcome to Popcorn the Writers. As you see, Jim is not currently at his desk. Oh, there he is. Hello, Jim. Remember, Popcorn the Writers with us. Are we ready to begin? I think we're ready. Okay, I'm going to stop this voice now. And we go. Okay.
Yeah, because you were going to force me to start doing a voice funnier than my own. Yay!
Hello, Kermit the Frog here.
Right, I was going to say, yay!
Hey, Eddie, good to see you. So, tonight's topic is going to spin off of what Eddie suggested last week.
I don't even remember last week.
Were you celebrating 420 yesterday?
Did we have a show? I don't even...
So, what Ed suggested was talking about which superhero has the best rogues gallery.
Oh, yes. And we decided it was Batman, right? Mm-hmm.
We decided we were going to have the debate.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's Batman. So
it's Batman. Yeah, I mean, all right. So that was a great topic, and
but that's not the topic we're doing. But we're going to spin off of that because what we're going to talk about is that both you and I are writers, and I have noticed over my many years of reading comics that the characters that seem to be the most popular are the ones that have a really good rogues gallery. Even if it's just a half dozen, most of the ones I can think of that are really good have, close to 10. Superman has 8 to 10 good ones. Not great ones.
That's debatable.
Daredevil has some, but the ones that do well are the ones that have good rogues, or bad guys, and the ones that kind of hover in anonymity are the ones that don't.
Wonder Woman.
Well, Wonder Woman is popular because she's kind of part of the pantheon, the trinity of heroes.
Yeah,
and she's got a couple decent ones.
Yeah. Yep, and she has an estate that will take the character back if DC stops publishing, right?
Yeah, but you look at somebody like we brought up Hawkman last week, and he's got one.
Yeah, and what is it? Shadow Thief?
Gentleman Ghost, I thought.
Oh, yeah. Well, one could say Shadow Thief is but they don't really use him.
No. And they're very similar characters.
Yeah. Oh, I remember. You know what? You brought up Vandal Savage, and I said, "Oh, well, he's a Hawkman." Originally he was a Hawkman villain, but nobody thinks of that at all today.
Yeah. Well, it's like Kingpin for Daredevil.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He was a Spider-Man villain first.
Well,
it wasn't until Frank Miller took over the book and drew him in Frank Miller's way that people went, oh.
That's a really good, that's a really good set of villains, or like a subset of villains, is villains who have become everybody's villain. Dr. Doom, the Kingpin, and you brought up Darkseid last time.
Yeah.
Technically, he's a Superman villain, but he's now become everybody's villain.
Right.
Probably a few others, that I mean, not Lex Luthor. I mean, they've tried to sort of make him, everybody's villain, but he's primarily Superman's villain. And
I don't know if I consider Darkseid even Superman's villain, because the books that he debuted in were Superman adjacent books.
Yeah.
But only because Jack Kirby wanted to pick the worst selling book at DC and pick that up and then create his New Gods and tie it all together.
Okay.
So
well,
if they could have handed him Aquaman,
would that make Darkseid an Aquaman character at that point?
That's a good point. What about Thanos?
Thanos was an Iron Man villain.
That's correct. Yep, he premiered in Iron Man.
Yeah, and he had a helicopter, which is so really weird.
Yeah, let's not go there. You're talking, yeah, that's Spidey super stories.
Yeah. Hey, it showed up in the MCU, so
I know. So it's canon now.
it's canon now. Yep.
Yep.
No, but all right. So let's look at it this way. What are the things you think are necessary for creating a successful hero in the comic market?
I mean, if it was up to me, it's costume.
Okay, we'll put that number one. Okay.
That is
Costume.
kind of the highest thing on my personal list. And I look back of all the characters that I like, going, as far back to when I was, small, a kid, it always came down to how they looked visually. Because I was an artist when I was a little kid, and I was very, very visually oriented, and still am, even if they didn't have the greatest name in the world, if they looked cool, we're not even talking powers, if they looked cool, then that was good enough for me.
Okay. What's your second thing?
I almost want to see. I don't think power set has never been big for me. I can't really say power set because most of the characters I like, or a good majority of them, don't have powers. They're usually like the Mystery Men characters from the 40s. So it's funny, that had a lot to do with it too. The era in which they were created. Because even in the 70s, I gravitated towards the characters created in the 40s.
Yeah, it says for me, the most important thing for me is they have to be a real threat to the hero and to the world. That's where Superman struggles to have a great rogues gallery. Fair enough. Yeah. So the villains need to be a threat.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. And yeah, since we're talking about villains, a good hero has to have good villains.
Okay, so your number 2 is the good villains.
Yeah, let's say that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm writing these down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, what would the third thing be?
I would say they have to play well with others. And I don't know. Let me think of how to expand upon that. I always liked the characters that were the coolest with other characters. I know this is funny because I'm a Batman fan. I'm not much for the loner, characters. I like the one, because Batman was a team up character,
So you want him to be able to team up with other heroes.
Yeah, like Batman when I was little, Batman was all over the place. He was in the Justice League. He was always teamed with Superman. He was in Brave and Bold. He was literally all over the place, and I like that. And although it wasn't as huge as it is now, he had a growing, Bat family. We had the actual book called Batman Family.
Yeah.
And I liked that about Batman, is that there was Robin and there was Batgirl and Batwoman, not necessarily Batmite, so a family of characters. So let's stick with the plays well with others kind of thing. If he's cool by himself, it's even better if he's cool next to another character.
Okay. So we're going to go for 5 here. What's your fourth?
Wow. can fit into many different types of stories. And see, I'm going with Batman. It's like, what? Because I'm asking myself, why is it that I like Batman? Superman is a good example of that too. Superman could fit into a pretty good wide variety of stories. But when I was a kid, Batman could fit into any kind of story and did, everything from science fiction to gothic horror, magic, pure adventure, pulp, science fiction, everything. He was a real everyman character. So definitely that.
Okay.
I guess, boy, if I had to say a sixth one,
Or fifth one.
oh, fifth. I'm sorry. Boy, I'm wondering if it might be like paraphernalia, because that's definitely Batman. And that's definitely not Superman unless you start to get into Fortress of Solitude and things like that. Yeah, I guess that was another key thing for me is the stuff that they had. That's funny because it's like I always like Green Arrow better than Green Lantern. Because Green Lantern pretty much has the ring and nothing else. The ring, well, he had the power battery, but so what? That's just the ring adjacent, But Green Arrow, as much as he was a Batman wannabe, he still had all the cool stuff. He had all the trick arrows, and he had an arrow cave and an aeromobile and an aeroplane, and stuff like that. So like, paraphernalia.
Okay. So, all right. So we got your 5.
Yeah.
Now, I match you on some, but I differ on others.
Okay.
I agree with a good costume. He's got to have a good look.
Yeah.
So, and I agree with good villains.
Mm-hmm.
And what Ed's saying in here, but they got to be more than just a good looking villain. They've got to have a good backstory. They've got to be either someone you can relate to or something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you need a few of them. You can't just have one,
So you're saying that you just, if they have an interesting gimmick, is not enough, because obviously there are so many supervillain characters in comics that they pretty much had a gimmick and then they had nothing else going for them.
Yeah, there's a reason we care about Mr. Freeze and not Condiment King.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. All right. Plays well with others. I do like that, but I think it kind of molds partly into something I am important to me, which is a strong supporting cast. But that's more than just like Batman's family. That's Alfred. That's Commissioner Gordon. That's
that's a really, really good point. I got it. You know what? This is really interesting. When I was a kid, Batman didn't really have the best supporting cast like that, but who did was Superman, because when I came into Superman comics, they were really growing his job at, I think it was WGBS, the Galaxy Broadcasting System. And that's why I really love rereading those earlier 70s, mid 70s issues today, because it reminds me of how comfortable of a place that was. Well, Morgan Edge was a jerk, obviously, but he'd go into work and there's Jimmy and there's Lois and there's Morgan Edge and there's Steve Lombard and there's trying to think of Lola. I can't think of her name. She was like almost the gossip columnist kind of.
Oh, Cat.
Well, Cat Grant came much later. Cat Grant is John Byrne, if I remember correct. There was a character named Lola too, and I can't think of what the last name. That Lola Barnett. There was just this really, and then better still is that when he went home to Clinton Avenue, whatever the number was on Clinton Avenue, they had all the characters that lived in his apartment. There was like the twins, May and April or whatever it was, and other different, characters, the doorman and all of that. It's funny, the Batman comics of the 70s, I mean, it's pretty much like Commissioner Gordon and Alfred. When they started to bring in maybe Lucius Fox, but it's not that fun of a world. And that's mostly because Batman didn't care much for being Bruce, where, Superman spent a fair amount of time as Clark Kent. And you know what? Peter Parker's the same way. They always said that Spider-Man was basically a soap opera. So there was all those familiar, non-powered, non-superhero characters that he would run into and, in and out of his stories, Harry Osborn and, J. Jonah and all the different, Betty and Mary Jane and obviously Gwen and all of those. Flash Thompson.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can see what you're talking about. Yeah, you know what? That doesn't really jibe with my plays well with others, because I am thinking of more of a character's peers,
right,
in the business. So
right. And
I'll give you that though. That's a really good one.
Yeah, and I'm looking at heroes kind of just on their own, not necessarily in a universe, because I'm thinking of characters who haven't been successful. And they're missing these items, and no, they're not, or they've been in crossovers, but it doesn't help.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a lot of the characters from Image. In the 90s when they launched all their books, there was Spawn and then Shadowhawk and all of Rob Liefeld's characters and Jim Lee's Wildcats, and they all existed in a cohesive universe. But it's hard to come up with who the villains are for any of those characters. Spawn, you have the clown, and there's 100 some odd books out there. Now, Eric Larson, of course, has been creating characters after characters after characters, and Savage Dragon has been consistently what it's been doing. It's not dropped. It has its fan base, and I think that's because he does kind of have all those elements. He has a cool looking character. Mm-hmm. He has strong villains. Mm-hmm. He has strong supporting cast. Mm-hmm. That right there were my first three.
Yeah.
Importance wise. I don't necessarily know if I need the character to be able to jump genres, but I think that kind of goes hand in hand with teaming with others, because if he teams with others and they're a different genre, well, if he can't make the jump, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Does Savage Dragon, I mean, it's funny. I mean, my God, I'm not even sure if I've ever really read a full Savage Dragon. Back in the day, if some of those characters I was exposed to, if Hellboy met them, like if there was some kind of crossover with Madman or Hellboy, or, one of those. But does Savage Dragon have different kinds of stories, or is it pretty much just always urban slugfest?
It's mostly urban slugfest. Sometimes go sci-fi, sometimes go horror, but the main theme is pretty consistent.
Is he still? He really is still publishing that book?
Yeah.
Wow.
All on its own too. Only one issue was ever not done by him. That's when he and Jim Lee swapped issues, and he regretted that and came back and redid the issue himself.
So that's been how many years now?
They started in 92.
Yeah, so almost like more than 30 years, 32 years or something like that. Wow. Do you know what the numbering is like?
I was about to look. I think he's in like 300s.
Well, good for him. Yeah, because you know what? I don't think my comic shop even carries it. They carry Spawn stuff. I know that, but other than that, I don't think they carry. I haven't seen Savage Dragon on their shelves in literally years. Wow.
Let's see. The next issue coming out, he's skipping April, so it goes from the March issue to the May issue. So it's not 100% monthly at this point.
Yeah.
That'll be issue 270.
Okay. Huh. Wow. But he's been consistently publishing it, every year for 32 years.
Whew. Yep. Yeah. Ironically, I'm looking at the cover for 271, and there's a picture of Mickey Mouse walking towards them.
Aha. Good old Eric. That's nice.
Yep. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, all the other Image characters have pretty much fallen by the wayside. Then those main ones, that first group of them.
Jim Lee's characters got evolved into DC.
Right, Wildcats, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they bought Wildstorm,
right?
And I think Whilce Portacio's characters were tied to Wildstorm, but I don't know if he still owns Wetworks or not. Savage Dragon is still going. Spawn is still going strong.
Yep, Wetworks. Oh my God, that's right? I guess that's what that was. What was that one? Something Hawk. Shadowhawk.
Yeah. Jim Valentino's.
And that's no longer.
No, that's not necessarily true. He's done they just did a one-shot. I think it was a one-shot with Philip Tan on art, and that was just a few months back.
Oh, okay.
And the previous creative team on that was quite a few years ago now, but there was Tone Rodriguez on art and some guy named Dan Wickline writing.
Oh. Boy, was I walked right into that one. Man.
You were
almost like I set that up for you, Wow.
Yeah, when they were doing Image United, Jim had decided to not only bring Shadowhawk back, but he wanted to bring the original Shadowhawk back, because if you remember the original Shadowhawk, it was a character that had AIDS.
Yeah, I remember this now. Yep.
Yeah, and he did die. Uh-huh. And then that mantle got passed on to a young kid, and Jim wanted to go back to the original one. I ran into him at a convention in Phoenix, and I said, "So, Jim, what are you going to do with Shadowhawk? I mean, are you going to bring him back?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm looking for a way to bring Paul Johnstone back." I go, "Oh, well, I have some ideas for that." He goes, "Okay."
As simple as that.
Yeah. He said, who do you think we should get to draw it? And I was sitting, because I traveled with Tone everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And we had done this convention together. He was sitting next to me. I went, "Tone." He looked over with Tone and said, "Tone, you want to do Shadowhawk?" He goes, "Yeah." That was literally how it worked. Wow. I put my pitch together. He liked it. But Shadowhawk's, it's funny that you kind of backed into that, because Shadowhawk was kind of where this thought of tonight's show came from.
Okay.
Because when I sat down to do Shadowhawk, I had reread everything, and I'm like, well, there's some things this character's missing. He's got a great backstory.
Okay, right.
He's got a great costume.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a gimmick, snapping people's backs. But he doesn't have a rogues gallery.
Yeah, there you go.
Or the ones he had weren't that memorable.
Uh-huh.
Sorry. And he didn't really have a supporting cast. Now, the newer kid that came along had some of that. But if we were going to go back to Paul, he didn't. So my original idea was we were going to launch out of Image United.
Mhm.
We were going to be coming out of the third issue, which is where the character would first come back to life.
Mhm.
And the thing with Shadowhawk, Jim had made it so it was a legacy character. There was the spirit of the Shadowhawk or whatever it was, and it was passed down through the centuries from person to person to person.
Okay.
And that the last kid could actually tap into it and speak to the spirits of the previous ones.
Okay. Mhm.
So we knew about this Council of Shadowhawks. And I've said, okay, what I want to do is have the kid beaten so badly that he's about to die. And he can only talk to him when he's wearing the helmet, and the helmet gets knocked off. And his dad is a big part of the story. I'm like, run over, have his dad put the helmet on and plead to the spirits for some way to save this kid, some way to save his son. And the spirits imbued him with the powers, but they did it by bringing the last one back.
Ah.
And he basically so the kid lost his father, but was saved by the original Shadowhawk, who then came back.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was going to be the story going forward. I had planned to rebuild I was going to build up a supporting cast, and it was going to be a little Batman-like because I wanted to have that familiar feeling.
Yeah.
There would be a commissioner that the police captain he was going to get close to, who was also a costume character. And I wanted to introduce villains pretty quickly, but I wanted them to have interesting stories.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is a kid in an armor. Well, it turns out that he was one of the first kids that when he was found guilty, Shadowhawk snapped his spine. So he was paralyzed. But he sued the state, sued the city for not protecting him, and won. And he took all that money and put it into building this suit of armor. And when the original Shadowhawk came back, he attacked him.
Okay.
And that's like the first issue.
Okay.
So all of a sudden you got ramifications right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we got our first villain. Then I had a second villain set up, which was just sick and twisted. It's more than I can go into on this show.
Okay.
And then the third villain was being set up was my own creation called Chalk, which was a former soldier that got shot in the head and the bullet's still in there. He doesn't feel pain because his nerve system is screwed up. The only thing he feels is either completely calm or over-the-top rage.
Okay.
And there are people like that. There's actually cases like that.
Yeah.
So he kind of takes over the gang, and it was going to build up so he'd be kind of the Joker for Shadowhawk.
Okay.
So that was my whole plan, was to build up the supporting characters, build up the villains, and avoid backbreaking. I wasn't going to break any backs for a while. And then the first time he does it, suddenly everything that he started building up again starts to deteriorate.
Mm-hmm.
So this world he starts to rebuild is suddenly shaky because he goes back to his old tricks.
Was there no concern with like bringing back the original that was like a disservice to like people who really did die of AIDS? Because there was some nod to the real world there, obviously.
Because I don't think it was because we didn't cure him.
Okay.
And when we brought him back, it was through a sacrifice.
Yeah. Okay. So what happened to the persona or personality of that kid who was Shadowhawk?
Well, no, the kid's still alive in a coma.
Oh, okay.
That's where we left him.
Okay.
And the dad is the one that disappeared.
Okay. But the original guy takes over whose body?
The dad.
Okay, the dad's. Gotcha. Okay.
Right. No, that's how the kid loses his father.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, and the kid's got some other heroes that he teams up with occasionally, and they're all tracking down the new Shadowhawk, trying to find out what the hell's going on. So there's a lot of storylines to do, and I was really excited about this. I know Jim was digging it,
Mm-hmm.
but the problem was that Image United didn't happen.
Mm.
Issue 1 came out, issue 2 came out extremely late, and I don't think 3 ever came out. So what we did was, when we were on a schedule, we came out, and of course we didn't have the fanfare
Okay.
to go with it. So we ended up telling the story of him coming back in the 5th issue, and that was where we wrapped it up. But it was supposed to be an ongoing.
Hmm.
But that was my thought when I was, bringing the character back is, he's already got the cool look, he's got the cool name, and he's got his gimmick. But what he needs is a supporting cast and some good villains. And like I said, we created some pretty just bizarre villains.
So you got to do 5 issues.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
with the 5th one not being what I originally planned,
yeah.
and we rushed some of the other stuff because the writing was on the wall pretty quickly. That we didn't catch the zeitgeist. We didn't, the numbers weren't there because.
Okay, that's exactly what it was. That he decided that it just wasn't.
Yeah.
The numbers weren't there, as you say. Okay.
Yep. But I love doing it, and I would jump at the chance to write the character again. But I still feel that what we were doing was the right approach.
Mm-hmm.
That you really need to have strong villains because you need to have a threat. You need to have the other side of the story.
Sure.
And there's so many characters, yeah, there are successful characters who don't have great villains. James Bond. Most of the James Bond villains are kind of cookie cutter.
Yeah, he has one. He has one Blofeld.
Yeah, but Scamander or whatever it was could have been a good one, Man with the Golden Gun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But he lasted one.
Yeah. Well, James Bond is a character though that it doesn't really lend itself to recurring villains. I mean, that you expect that at some point he's going to kill them. So that doesn't see, that goes back to is James Bond a superhero? And I say no, he's not. That's another thing because he should be killing his villains. I mean, it's that sort of a thing.
Jaws was fun. Didn't he show up in 2 movies?
Yes. Yeah. He's in Moonraker, and then he's in
Spy Who Loved Me.
Yeah, Spy Who Loved Me, and then he's in Moonraker. Yep. Yeah, he's in those 2. I think that's it. I don't know of any other one.
This is a horrible story, but the only reason I remember the name The Spy Who Loves Me is because of a quick laugh-in skit. Roger Moore was on it. And a very flamboyant gentleman walked out and handed him an award for gay representation in the movies. And he's like, what? He goes, for your new movie, The Guy Who Loved Me. He goes, it's The Spy Who Loved Me. Guy rips the trophy out of his hands and storms off.
That's funny.
Yeah. But that stuck with me. And I was a kid when I saw that. Yeah.
The Spy Who Loved Me was the first James Bond movie I saw in the theater. Everything before that I had seen on television, but my dad took me to see Spy Who Loved Me. And then from that point on, through all the Roger Moore films, and then the very first Timothy Dalton film, I saw them all in the theater.
I saw Moonraker in the drive-in with my parents.
I went to see Moonraker twice because that was the Star Wars James Bond movie.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. See, what's funny is, it's like I grew up when I first started seeing Bond movies. Roger Moore was James Bond.
Yep, that's me. Yeah.
But everybody's like, no, Roger Moore was the Saint. I'm like, no, Ian Ogilvy was the Saint. Because I was watching The Return of the Saint with my dad.
Yeah.
And then I was watching Roger Moore as James Bond. And then I got older and started listening to radio classics, and I went, what do you mean Vincent Price is the Saint? That doesn't work at all.
Right. That's funny.
Yep. It's funny, some of the actors who did the radio programs and how few of them jumped because they didn't look like the character.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. What's his name did Gunsmoke, and although he had a great
William Conrad.
Yeah, he had a great voice for it, he did not have the look to make that jump.
Now, it's more rare that you find someone who does, like Chester Morris, who went from the radio programs into doing the Boston Blackie movies and stuff.
Yep. And Jack Benny continued to play himself into TV.
Oh yeah. And so his first was Moonraker as well. Cool.
Yeah, I hear that from a lot of people, of a certain age, that's where they came in.
Yeah. Could you imagine people who their James Bond for their entire life has been Daniel Craig?
Well, that's a good place to start.
Oh, it's not bad. I still think the opening scene of Casino Royale is one of the best openings of any James Bond movie ever.
Yeah. You mean with the parkour thing? Yeah. Oh no, that Casino Royale is a very, very good movie, and I remember being very excited because they kept a lot from the books. Even the famous line at the end when he says the bitch is dead. I was like waiting for it, and I thought, nah, that's probably this is whatever year that was. It's like they're not going to use that, and sure enough, that it's in there.
Ed says, "I'll be honest, Craig is the best Bond. Then Dalton is my favorite." Interesting.
No,
I'm not going to argue with you about Craig because I really like Daniel Craig.
Yeah, he's my second. He's after Connery. He's my second, and that's me growing up with Roger Moore. Roger Moore is not very high on my list. I mean, God love him and all of that, but no, it's Sean Connery and then Daniel Craig.
I may actually agree with you. I may, because to me, Craig felt the most like Bond. And I've read a bunch of the novels. I mean, I've got 3 of them right here. I've got Goldfinger, Dr. No, and I thought I had a third one there, but I got Goldfinger and Dr. No right here.
He is, and that's another debatable thing. But yeah, I would agree that right, even potentially, more so than Sean Connery. It's just that I love Sean Connery as James Bond, but Daniel Craig could be said to be, closest. The one thing that they never have done is go so far as they have the scar. And I always kind of wish that, that because Daniel Craig was a little craggier, than he's a pretty boy, but he could also be very rough looking too, But I always kind of wish they would have done the scar.
See, for me, it's Daniel Craig, Sean Connery.
Yep.
And sometimes it goes back and forth. I will not argue with anybody who comes up and says, my favorite Bond is, and gives one of those 2 names. I get it.
Yep.
My third is Pierce Brosnan. Because there's a moment in one of the movies, and it's the one with Monica Bellucci in it. And Robert Carlyle is the guy with doesn't feel anything. And he kills her. And he's got feelings for her. And just the look in his eye when he does it. It's like, yeah, That's Bond
Yeah.
right there. Also, this is going to be kind of silly. I love the way he ran.
That's great.
Running James Pierce Brosnan is like Tom Cruise level running for me. You know, there's certain people that just really know how to movie run, and he's up there. You know,
You're not a Timothy Dalton James Bond fan?
I don't think he got good scripts to work with.
Hmm.
I like Timothy Dalton. I've liked him in everything else I've seen him in. He was
Yeah.
great in Doom Patrol. He was great in Flash Gordon as Prince Baron.
Mhm.
You know, I like Timothy Dalton a lot. And I don't dislike his movies. There isn't a James Bond movie that I go, I hate that. Maybe Never Say Never Again.
Oh, that had its charm, as far as Sean Connery coming back and all of that. But it's still right. It's still, to me, it's like, yeah, it's official, but it's not like a real. You don't get the famous music. You don't get the famous James Bond theme, and that makes it a little hard to believe it's James Bond.
What disappoints me a little bit is I collect some pop figures. And I have the 4 James Bonds they've put out so far.
Okay.
And it's Sean Connery, Roger Moore, Daniel Craig, and Pierce Brosnan. Nice. You went for the white tuxedo, I went for the black. But they have none for Timothy Dalton, and they have none for George Lazenby.
Oh my God. I can't believe I forgot George Lazenby. Seriously, On Her Majesty's Secret Service is one of my most favorite James Bond film. And he is never given enough credit. He's perfectly fine in that, and I love that movie because honestly it's one of the closest adaptations of any James Bond movie to the book.
Yep. And Lazenby is probably the closest in physical description to what Ian Fleming actually wrote.
Hoagie Carmichael.
Yeah.
You're supposed to look like Hoagie Carmichael, although nobody knows today who the hell Hoagie Carmichael is. But
by the way, anybody who is a fan of Ian Fleming and James Bond should check out the movie that opened this weekend, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. And the reason is that it's based on a true story about an actual British agency that was created during World War II, I believe, called the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which was the British version of Black Ops. These were the first wet works people. And the ministry was put together by Winston Churchill, and Ian Fleming.
You just combine those two. That's a great name, though. I like that. Yeah,
Ian Churchill is actually a comic book artist.
Right. I was like, why does that name sound familiar?
Yeah. But Winston Churchill and Ian Fleming are the one that put that team together.
Are they characters in the movie?
No, I don't know if they're characters in the movie or not.
Okay. Yeah, that's the really cool thing is that Ian Fleming did actually live a fairly exciting life, and a lot of what he actually did, inspired Bond.
That's a good question. I'm going to look up the names real quick to see because I know it's not going to be the main characters, but Cary Ells seems to be the guy behind them, and he's playing Brigadier, the Brigadier that controls them. There is somebody. Oh, yep, there we go. Roy Kinnear is playing Churchill, and Freddie Fox is playing Ian Fleming.
Huh.
So yeah, they're both in it.
Wow. I wonder if the Fleming estate is behind that film.
Well, since it's a real thing, I don't think they can control that.
No, but you'd almost hope that they were, involved somehow at least.
Yeah.
Huh. All right, very interesting. I had heard of the movie, but
Oh yeah, it's got an amazing cast. You got Henry Cavill, Alan Ritchson from Reacher, Isaac Gonzalez, who was in the Bloodshot movie and a bunch of other stuff, Alex Pettyfer, who was in that movie, The Number Four,
mhm.
Carrie Ells, of course, from The Princess Bride, and Robin Hood Men in Tights, Henry Golding, who just played Snake Eyes in the latest Snake Eyes movie.
Hmm.
And I will never get this poor man's name right. Babs Olusan Mokun. And he was in Dune, Dune Part 2, The Book of Clarence, a bunch of other movies.
There's been a lot more talk very recently about James Bond and rumors of casting and things like that. What have you thought about any of those
There
rumors?
was rumor that it was going to be, what's his name? He played Quicksilver in Avengers Age of Ultron. Not Evan Peters, but Taylor.
The other guy, the one that died.
Yeah, Aaron Taylor something. Aaron Taylor Smith. Aaron Taylor Johnson. I don't mind him but the more I've been hearing lately is that rumor isn't true.
Okay, I didn't.
Not
care.
that he's not,
I don't care. I mean, I liked him in Age of Ultron and all of that. As far as I thought he made a good Quicksilver, but I didn't care much for the idea of him as Bond.
Well, everybody I talked to who saw that said to watch the movie Bullet Train.
Okay.
The one with Brad Pitt and a bunch of other people, but it's an action movie. He's in it. He's teamed up with the guy who played Hephaestus in Eternals.
Not Hephaestus. Or I know who you mean. The character. I know what character you mean.
Hephaestus.
Yeah, I can't. It's funny. Some of those names I can't even remember anymore. I know who you mean. You know what I was going to say about James Bond is that I always when you start talking about who's your favorite James Bond or casting James Bond, to me that's very related and akin to who will play Bruce Wayne Batman. People I think get as passionate about who is your Bruce Wayne / Batman as James Bond. And it's the same sort of thing when you start to speculate who could be the next Batman / Bruce Wayne.
Well, the thing is that there's three characters that have the British heart. James Bond, Doctor Who, Sherlock Holmes. But there have been so many Sherlock Holmes.
Yep.
That who's going to be the next Sherlock isn't that big of a thing. But who's going to be the next Doctor and who's going to be the next James Bond is always so big over there that they take bets on it. And the Sun always reports, it's going to be this guy, it's going to be that guy, it's going to be the other guy.
Well, all bets are off as far as Sherlock Holmes goes because, when you get Americans playing Sherlock Holmes.
Robert Downey Jr.
Although I liked him as, in that. But as far as I know, no American has ever played Doctor Who.
You need one of two things to make a good Doctor. One or two things to make a good Sherlock Holmes. You either need an exceptional actor as Sherlock, which Jeremy Britt is still probably the best.
He's still the man. Yep.
Right. But what Robert Downey Jr. and Benedict Cumberbatch had that Jeremy never had was a really good Watson. I mean,
I know people who would argue that one as far as Jeremy Brett goes,
They switch Watsons halfway through the run, and most people can't tell the difference.
That's very true. Although, like in my crowd, people like the second guy.
Yeah, and I get that.
My
And I
problem
agree.
was that they were endowing Watson with little too much humor. Like they were trying to go for like a funny, I mean, I guess you could go all the way back to Nigel Bruce, with that idea. But yeah, I
But
I I agree. I agree.
with Britt, they did what they always do with Watson, is he's the audience representation of how did you do that, Holmes?
Sure.
And Jude Law
Yeah, Jude Law.
and played Morton Freeman.
Hmm.
Don't play it that way. I mean, every once in a while they go, how the hell did you do that? But they tend to play it a little bit more adversarial and fed up with all the eccentricities.
Yeah.
And it makes for a fun interaction. I love Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman, how they work off of each other in all those Sherlock episodes. And I love Jude Law and Robert Downey Jr.
I was going to say, yeah, there's a definite, I'm not sure what the word, adversarial nature there. Definitely. Yeah.
Jeremy Britt is going to bring you classic, pure Arthur Conan Doyle.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to feel like you are reading the books, you sit down and you watch the Jeremy Britt.
Yep.
And there's certain, you want to feel like you're reading Nero Wolfe, get the A&E Timothy Hutton ones.
Yep.
But there is something about the interactions between the different Sherlocks with Robert Downey Jr. and Benedict Cumberbatch, which takes it to another level, a different level, where, yes, they're going away from the actual story. They're making changes, but it's still Sherlock, and the interaction kind of takes over some of that. It's kind of like one of my favorite shows of all time, White Collar. It's very been done before, the whole idea of the con helping the cop.
Mm-hmm.
What makes it work is the interaction between Matt Bomer and Tim DeKay. They're so good working off of each other, and the supporting cast is so good that it makes it worth watching. So, we got some stuff from Ed. First, Ed says, did you ever hear the Sean Connery character in The Rocks? Yes, was supposed to be James Bond. The writer, I think, intentionally put in enough little Easter eggs that you could go, yeah. And the time that he was supposed to be in prison in Alcatraz is a time where James Bond was supposed to be missing in the Ian Fleming novels. So the guy did his homework to make it possible. But yeah, I think it's great. It's just fun writing. And it says, I was hoping Idris Elba would play Bond, but he's not interested. Maybe he's too old for several films. I don't know. I'm going to be kind of controversial on this. I don't want a female or a black James Bond.
Yeah.
Because who the character is, how he was raised, makes James Bond who he is.
Mm-hmm.
A black person would bring a different upbringing, a different, just the effect of community and effect of life on him, as would a woman. Now, would I love to see them expand the double O's? Make a bunch of, do an MI6 movie that introduces a bunch of other double O's, and bring Idris Elba in to be 008, and bring Ana de Armas or anybody you want to be another 00 agent, and let them be their own characters, and let them have their own personalities and imbued new spies. They can still be part of the James Bond world. They can, but the way James Bond was raised, his upbringing and stuff, makes him a certain type of character.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
And I mean, I I'm on the thing that I want to see the characters how I grew up with them. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I can also understand that in the day, there wasn't a lot of representation for minorities.
Yep.
I get that, and I understand that. I
Yep.
also know, like Iron Fist. Iron Fist is a white savior trope, and a lot of people wanted him to be at least half Asian. And as much as I grew up loving Danny Rand and that character, and I associated with him because he had the same name as me, same hair. I was blonde when I was a kid. I connected with him. That makes more sense to me because if he's half Asian, it doesn't change the character. I think if you make James Bond a woman or a minority, it completely changes the
Yeah.
Bond we get.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's an argument out there about that James Bond is a name, it's a title, kind of a thing, and they they could play with that. But yeah, I do agree with you. It's not like Doctor Who where he's an alien, he's a shape change, he's a shape changing alien or whatever. That literally the character can be anybody.
Absolutely.
And that's why I've never understood anybody getting upset about who is playing Doctor Who when he can literally change into anybody,
Yep.
But yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to, have to agree with that one.
I liked Peter Capaldi. I like Jodie Whittaker, and I'm really looking forward to Ncuti Gatwa.
Mm-hmm. I am too. And that's going to be coming up very soon. It's like May 10th or something like that. It's going to be here before we know it.
Okay, Ed had one more comment. My favorite Sherlock Holmes is House MD. The show is so similar to Holmes, House, Watson, Wilson. Not only that, but if you remember correctly, in the pilot episode of House, their patient's name was Irene Adler.
Ha ha ha. I want to recommend a version of Sherlock Holmes. There's a classic radio drama back in the day that was Sir John Gielgud as Holmes and Sir Ralph Richardson as Watson, and it's amazing. I mean, it's totally amazing that the two of them did that. So if you ever catch any of those, I really recommend those. It's just to listen to those two guys' voices, it's just amazing.
Yeah. No, I realized watching the pilot episode of House that they were making it a Sherlock Holmes thing. And it says, Dan, did you see Alan Richardson said that Reacher is America's James Bond? Not sure about that. Reacher doesn't use gadgets, but it was interesting reading his interview. Yes, actually, there's a lot of truth to what he said there, because the gadget thing was something they came up with in the 70s because of the popularity of the Avengers, the British show. Some of the little gadgets they had in there.
Yeah, right. If he's saying that it's more like the Bond of the books than the original books, then yeah, sure.
Yeah, and there's a lot of similarities. Reacher doesn't have any ongoing relationships. Every book is a standalone. Most James Bond books are standalone. You can jump in any order if you really want to.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a lot of similarities. Plus, there's a certain roughness to the American spirit. It's not as much now, but like if you, I go back to the musical 1776. We're here to reach, I know. There's a whole debate about why America needs to be a country. And Ben Franklin talks about how, because we're no longer English, we're Americans. We're rougher, sturdier, made of different stock because we've been through different things.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways, yeah, I think Jack Reacher probably is a bit like Bond, especially when you look at the Daniel Craig version and the novels, because Bond is a force of nature. Bond is not an investigator. Bond is the type of detective. I got my different detective types. Bond is the Sam Spade type, the one that kind of pounds his face into the fists of the bad guys until he gets the information he needs. You know, he's not the brilliant detective.
Yeah.
You know, he just keeps getting up and keeps nagging and keeps asking the questions until someone gives him the answer.
Yeah.
And Jack Reacher is the same way. And that's how Bond is supposed to be. He's a force. Judi Dench's character of M says that, I believe, in Casino Royale, calls him a blunt instrument. You know?
Yeah.
Do you think Reacher is autistic? The way they play him, like, zones out and stares into the future a lot and then spouts all the unbelievable knowledge out of the blue? Just curious. I don't think they're playing it that way, but they could. It wouldn't be that much of a stretch if they wanted to do that. But I don't think it would necessarily go well with the type of audience that tends to watch that. It's not. I wouldn't consider that to be your family-friendly, inclusive programming. You know, the body count is higher than the minority count. Now, what's funny is Richardson came out, and he's an interesting guy. He's religious, but not beat you over the head with it religious. But he came out and said that he couldn't understand why Christians are supporting Donald Trump, because he's anything but a Christian in the things he's done. And that could end up hurting him and the Reacher series, because I think a lot of the audience is conservative. I mean, I love the show, but I'm not necessarily conservative. I'm also not a liberal, so.
You know, from what I understand of Reacher, he could be considered something similar to the character of Matt Helm. The Matt Helm novels were at one time, when they were first coming out, considered to be sort of the American James Bond. There's not a whole lot of connection, but between them, but if I understand Reacher correctly, there might even be, something of Matt Helm in him too.
Have you not watched Reacher?
No. I pretty much have, because everybody I know has watched Reacher and have told me everything I need to know about it. Yeah.
It's funny. When you really enjoy something, you want everybody to know to watch it, because you want them to enjoy it too, and you want to be able to talk about it.
Sure.
But, the truth is that there are some things that just don't interest people. There's I don't remember what it is. There's something you haven't watched, and every time it comes up, we tell you should watch it. It's really good.
I think it's Reacher, isn't it?
I thought it was something.
There's probably lots of things. Like, what it is I mean, I do all my other, I have all my publishing and writing and, and everything like that, and I try to keep reading, and
it's the new Batman.
It's the new Batman. Oh, no, and I pretty much made up my mind. I probably will, maybe before the next one comes out,
At least before
yeah, it used to be Princess Bride, but I finally did watch that. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that Lisa's son Braden is a huge fan of Jurassic Park. He collects the figures. He can tell you everything about the movies and stuff, and it's just something he grew up loving.
Yeah.
And the other day, he said something about, well, you've seen the movie, of course, and started talking. I went, no. He goes, what? I said, no. You've seen the other ones, right? I'm like, no. It's not a franchise that interests me.
Not even the first one, huh?
No.
Okay.
First thing, my rule is, if the biggest selling point for something is the special effects, I'm probably not going to watch it. I haven't watched Avatar. Nobody comes by and goes, oh, the story is so good.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Normally what they say is, the story was good when they did it in Pocahontas. So I just don't have an interest in watching Avatar, just
Yeah.
like I don't have an interest in one. But because we're starting to do a toy review show,
What?
he's like, "Well, we're going to have to watch. We're going to have to watch it now." I went, "No, I know enough about Jurassic Park. I can review a toy."
Hmm.
He's like, "But you don't know what we're talking about." I'm like, "No, I do. It's enough in the zeitgeist. I know all about it. You know, I know about Sam Neill and Laura Dern and
Yep.
Wayne Knight and Samuel L. Jackson and Jeff Goldblum. I know all their characters. I know the whole turning the head scene and the dinosaur opening the door scene. You know, I know that stuff. It
Two
doesn't change how I'm going to review a toy.
two things. Did you like dinosaurs when you were a kid?
I like the Triceratops, but that's about it. I
Okay.
didn't have a bunch of
I
dinosaurs.
I was really into dinosaurs, when I was a kid. And then the other thing is you have a toy review show.
We're just getting it started. We're going to get a few reviews done.
Okay, and it's going to be current new toys then. Okay.
Collector toys.
All right. Well, make
Really,
sure
what it is, we're reviewing collector stuff.
Yeah.
The first one we review is a very rare figure from Japan based on Mecha Godzilla, but in the fake Godzilla suit.
Wait, how do I do? Look, see right here. If you talk about G.I. Joe,
Keep that in mind. We're going to do the Bloodshot figure. We're going to talk about him. That's on our list. He's got a bunch of Jurassic Park figures. Probably going to talk about some of the hot toys up there. So we're still working out. We've recorded one so far. I still need to edit it, but it's going to be a little different because we're not going to be on screen. It's going to be voiceover with footage of the toy.
Okay, that's cool. That's very cool.
So it'll be
hey, before we get out of here, can I get in a plug?
Please.
Oh, my new book is out, and it's comic related. It's my Brave and the Bold book. And there's sort of a connection with you anyways, is that now what I did is I tied this into the book that you're in, The Old Origin Changeth, because I made a series on my Amazon author page called Comic Book Culture. So that book that you're in is now in the same series as this one. So this is Breaking Bold and Brave, and it's my own personal journey through reading all 200 issues of The Brave and the Bold, and it's out now.
Nice. Very cool.
And I need reviews.
By the way, Ed, quit it. I mean it.
What was he doing?
That's the line that precedes what he wrote.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
There's a scene where they leave. They've got Princess Buttercup. They're sailing off, and they're talking, and everybody's talking, and they're rhyming the last word. And it's driving Vasenik. No, Vasenik is the little guy, Wallace Shawn's character, crazy.
I've already forgotten most of that movie. I've watched it, and then I can say I watched it, and I've forgotten most of it.
Did you know that in the fight scene in Princess Bride, in the classic sword fight between Inigo Montoya and Wesley, they start talking about different fencing strategies.
Okay, kind of remember that.
You're using Capoletti's defense. Well, it seemed appropriate with the rocky terrain. Yes, but you must assume that I know this, but it doesn't matter because I have studied Lupa. Well, it turns out every name and everything they're saying is 100% real.
Okay.
They didn't just write that in to be funny or to have them have dialogue. It's all true. They're really sword fighting styles.
And that's funny, since that movie isn't taking place in the real world, right? It's like a fantasy world. Yeah.
But it's a story being told by a grandfather to a son.
That's true.
So he might have added those things. Perhaps Peter Falk was a fencer in his younger days.
if that's all from the book, I could see where if the writer was doing his research for the fighting scene and then thought it was funny to stick in, those things that he himself had learned.
See, I love doing that. It's like
Mm.
when I was writing artifacts for Top Cow, there's one character who uses math like it's magic.
Huh.
She can do math equations and cause like spells and stuff to happen. And she's a mathematician. And this other character is trying to cheer her up and tells her a math joke.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I went online and I looked for math jokes. And I had to find one that wasn't too long, but was obviously mathy, geeky enough.
Mathy geeky.
Yeah. So after he tells the joke, she looks at him and goes, "Did you just tell me a math joke?" He's like, "Yeah, just trying to cheer you up." And she just kind of leans into him. So I love doing kind of stuff like that.
That's good.
Ed's quoting the movie now.
Well, okay. Well, all right. Well, it's been fun now. All right. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
This, of course, is from where Inigo is confronting the six-finger man. He says, "Offer me anything." "Okay, I'll give you anything you want." "I want my father back, you son of a bitch." And then stabs him. It's such a good movie. It really is.
Do they have a name for Princess Bride fans, like Trekkies, or
Yes, we call him intelligent.
oh, is that what it is? Bridies, like Swifties. Ugh, okay.
Hey. No disparaging the Lord and Savior Taylor Swift.
Okay.
I gotta admit, I am not a Swiftie, but I have so much respect for Taylor Swift and how she does her business and stuff.
Yeah, as far as that goes, she seems to be, good at what she does.
Yeah, and she writes a pretty good song.
Okay.
By the way, the big controversy this week, I'll just throw this out there before we go. Since we won't be here next week, we can go a minute or two longer. At the end of, she put out a double album, but she put the regular album out first, and then the extended one with another 15 songs. But the song that ended the standard album is called Clara Bow. And the last thing she says in the song is the word dazzling. Now, there's been an ongoing rumor that she was going to pop up in Deadpool as Dazzler.
Yeah.
And she is known for putting little Easter eggs in her songs.
I have to admit that she probably is the perfect person to play that character. I will admit. I mean, I'm not fond of the character or anything like that at all, but she seems to almost maybe be born to play that character.
Here, Marvel history. Who was the original design of Dazzler made after?
Wait, I know this. Was she designed by Dave Cockrum?
I think it was before Dave.
Okay. Shoot. I'm sorry, it's not coming to me.
She was actually designed to look like Grace Jones at first.
Grace Jones?
The idea, because what happened, and I looked this up the other day, is why I know it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But they were going to they based her off of Diana Ross, but they wanted to make her look like Grace Jones and do that whole design with the idea that they would get Grace Jones to play her in the movie. Because Grace Jones was both a singer and an actress.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, she was in a James Bond movie.
Right. Well, somehow after the movie 10, John Derek became interested saw the pitch for it, became interested in the character, and they completely revamped her to look like Bo Derek.
Oh, okay. So Dazzler was going to be black?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know if I've heard that. Huh.
A lot of the singles, I mean, they were basically doing it with Columbia Records. It was a co-production between them and Columbia Records, and it was going to basically be this kind of like Monkees style thing where they would then have someone they could send out
Yeah. Yeah.
and perform as Dazzler.
Yeah.
But when Bo Derek got involved, they changed her look like overnight to make her look like Bo Derek, and then it got held up, and then I think they were finally going to put the comic out. It was drawn, and Tarzan the Ape Man came out and flopped.
And killed everything, right?
And John and Bo just went away.
Yep.
Grace Jones was in one of the Conan movies, and she was
Yep.
in A View to a Kill.
View to a Kill. Yep. The last Roger Moore Bond movie. Yeah.
With
And
Christopher Walken.
Deservedly so.
With Christopher Walken and one of my favorites, not my favorite, but one of my favorite theme songs.
Yeah, a good theme song is about the only thing that movie has going for it.
Yep. So, okay. I think we've gone on long enough.
Okay.
So, thank you guys for tuning in. We will not be here next week. Jim's got work-related stuff, but please buy his book.
Buy my book.
So, if you put a link up on Facebook and share it with me, then it will go on my page as well.
Okay.
So, or you could just post it on my page. I'm cool.
I'll just post it right on your page.
Go for it.
I will do that.
All right, everybody. See you next time. I will be doing a show this week on the experience. I took last week off because I was just had so much going on. But we'll be doing the news on Tuesday and a show on Thursday. And I will see you all next week. Have a good one.